We've all heard it before. Stop weeds before they grow with this magical solution. But is that actually how it works? Well, today we're going to be breaking down one of the most common lawn care products called Pre-Emergent, when to use it, which ones actually work, and whether you should be applying it right now or waiting. I've treated lawns professionally for years, and I've seen this done right, and I've seen it completely fail. And by the end of this video, you'll know more about weed prevention than most homeowners, so let's get into it. You might have heard the rumors. Stopping weeds is easy. Just throw down that step 2 fertilizer with Pre-Emergent when soil temps hit 55 degrees, whammo, no weeds. Now there is some truth to that, but the keyboard warriors are slightly off, so we're going to talk about it. At the core, the product that we're talking about, it's called Pre-Emergent, emphasis on pre. And the number one thing that many people get wrong about it, besides their first marriage, is what it actually is. And the thing that most people don't realize, Pre-Emergent does not kill the seed. The seed actually starts to germinate, wakes up, absorbs moisture, begins the process of trying to become a plant. It starts pushing out what will become its first root and shoot. But here's where the barrier comes in. As a tiny seedling tries to grow through the treated zone in the soil, it absorbs the Pre-Emergent herbicide, and what that chemical does is shut down the seed's ability to divide its own cells. It swells up, stalls out, dies underground before it ever breaks the surface, and you never see it. And that's the whole point. So here's what that means for you. If crabgrass or other weeds have already germinated, Pre-Emergent does absolutely nothing to it. Zero. That plant already ran the race and won. Pre-Emergent is prevention, not a cure, but here's what most people miss when they think they've blown it. Even if some weeds have already germinated, your soil may be packed with other annual and biennial seeds that haven't germinated yet. So new pressure is coming all season long. A late application, it still has value. It just won't touch anything that already made it through. Those get handled with what's called a post-emergent herbicide, and more on that at the end. In today's shocking news, forget the calendar, forget the March 1st, the April 15th, whatever date that your master gardener, your neighbor threw at you, weed prevention timing comes down to soil temperature at the seed. And here's where it gets really interesting. That 55-degree number that you keep hearing everywhere, that's the crabgrass number. That's where the whole conversation starts and it ends for most people, and here's why. Crabgrass is classified as an annual grass. It needs consistent soil temps of around 53 to 58 degrees for several days in a row before it completes the germination cycle. That's a defined, predictable window. Pre-Emergent was basically designed around that window, but your lawn doesn't just have crabgrass in it. Different weeds, they germinate at completely different thresholds, at different depths, at different times of the year. Dandelions, for example, that thing could start germinating at soil temps as low as 50 degrees well before crabgrass even thinks about waking up. And because certain species can be triggered by light as much as temperature, it just keeps going all season long. So when somebody says Pre-Emergent stops weeds, what they really mean is it can disrupt weed germination in a specific temperature window. The rumor mill simplified it down to one number and they called it a day. So what does that mean for you? Well, 55 degrees, it's still your trigger, but as the name pre suggests, the products need to be applied before the soil reaches these temperatures. And don't expect one spring application to solve a biennial or a perennial weed problem in one season. Those are two different fights. Grab a thermometer. I use this Simple Meat thermometer and it works great. I'll link to the one that I use in the description. So you're gonna push it into the upper 2 inches of the soil around 8 in the morning. Temps are at their coolest. When you're consistently seeing somewhere between 45 and 55 degrees, that's your window. And it's screaming at you like your dad did when you were late for school. Get the product down. Right now, we're mid to late March. Warm season states like Texas, Georgia, and the Carolinas, they're at or past that window. In cool season states, Illinois, Ohio, Minnesota, you're right on the edge. This week or next, it's your moment, so don't blow it. Now, before we get into the products, real talk for a second. A lot of lawn care channels out there, they act like Pre-Emergent's the second coming, while others claim the Pre-Emergent's, well, it's Satan's anus. So wherein lies the truth? Pre-Emergents, they're not perfect, and here's why. They work by stopping cell division in germinating roots. The problem is your grass has roots too. So if you apply too much, overlap your passes too much, miscalibrate your spreader, and you'll stunt root development. development in your own lawn. Turf scientists, they have a name for it. They call it root clubbing. It's short, swollen, stubby roots that struggle to pull water and nutrients, especially when summer drought hits. Will you notice it? Honestly, at the label rates, debatable, but it also depends on the product versus how much side effects you could potentially have. But it's a real side effect and it matters when you're choosing your product. So more on that in just a second. The other thing is most pre-emergents don't discriminate. They don't know the difference between crabgrass seed and your grass seed. So look, if you've got a history of weed problems, Pre-Emergent's a fantastic tool to have in your bag. The alternative is a weed puller with a couple hundred holes in your lawn that you're never gonna patch. So Pre-Emergent, it's one of the best tools you've got to plan for the future. So let's get into the meat and potato of the conversation. What should I use? Should you use granular? Should you use sprays? But it all comes down to which active ingredient that you should use. Now that's what matters, not the logo. But quick disclaimer first, everything I'm about to tell you on timing and duration comes straight off the labels. Those numbers assume ideal conditions. Heat, temperature swings, heavy rain, biological activity in your soil, all of it can dramatically shorten how long these products actually work. And your lawn, believe it or not, it's not a lab. So keep that in mind. There are 4 active ingredients that you're gonna run into on the labels: Pendimethalin, dithiopyr, Prodiamine, and mesotrione. My clear winner, it's Prodiamine. So let me tell you why. Unlike the others, Prodiamine, it's not cold sensitive. It breaks down through biological activity in the soil, not directly through cold temperatures, which means that you can put it down early when it's still cold, and it just sits there waiting, ready to work. And according to the label, that barrier can last anywhere from 3.5 to 8 months, depending on your rate. Now, heavy downpours can affect it, but here's why Prodiamine handles rain better than the others. It bonds tightly to the soil, which means it doesn't move around as much, even when the water is coming down hard. It's not immune to heavy rain, nothing is, but it holds its position better than the competition. It doesn't stain your driveway either, your sidewalk, or your shoes like Pendimethalin has a tendency to. And of the 3 main options, Prodiamine causes the least root damage to your lawn. It's called root clubbing, and it's a common side effect, which means part of your grass can have a more difficult time uptaking water and nutrients. Now, Prodiamine is also safe on all major grass types like Bermuda zoysia, St. Augustine, centipede, bahia, tall fescue, bluegrass, ryegrass. Warm season or cool season, doesn't really matter. That is the professional standard for a reason. The one catch, it doesn't kill weeds. 0 weed killing properties once the weeds have emerged or completed their germination stage, strictly prevention. If crabgrass is already up when you apply it, Prodiamine does absolutely nothing to it, and that's where dithiopyr comes in. If your timing slipped, crabgrass has already started moving, dithiopyr is your backup. Same broadgrass type safety as Prodiamine. It has early weed killing properties, the others don't. So if crabgrass is germinated but hasn't leafed out past the 3rd tiller, dithiopyr could still take it out, and that's a win that you don't get anywhere else. Now, going back to Pendimethalin, which is commonly known as Scott's Halts. It works and it's safe on the same major grass types with the exception of dichondra and bent grass. But it's the weakest of the 3. According to the label, you're getting roughly 8 to 10 weeks per application. It's been known to stain yellow and it causes the most root damage of the 3. It's a well-known product and truth be told, it works. And it's been in the big box shelves forever for a reason. But now you know why Prodiamine is the upgrade. So keep in mind, pre-emergents don't discriminate except for one. It's called mesotrione, commonly known as Tenacity, or Scott's makes one in a granular form. It's kind of magical. So if you're planning a seeding project this spring, standard pre-emergents disrupt germination from all seeds they encounter. Tenacity or mesotrione allows some of the grass seeds to germinate, being a great tool for seeding projects or those that want pre-emergent properties but plan to seed later. The biggest effect, it's just time. It only lasts 3, maybe 4 weeks as a pre-emergent. It also has post-herbicide properties to it like dithiopyr, but the plant already has to have emerged from the soil. So the results, they vary. It's only safe on select cool season grasses and centipede. So check your grass type first and we'll cover it in detail later in the season. But these products, they commonly come in granular or a spray. Now they both work, but spray wins on consistency. You're basically painting the active ingredient directly on the grass crabgrass in one even pass. Granular, it works too. Just dial in the spreader. The rates are on the product label. You need to follow it, and the label is law. It's also very common to see pre-emergence combined with fertilizer, and that's safe as well. Now, here's a step that I see a lot of people skip every single year, and it quietly kills their entire application. You gotta water it in, and the sooner the better. For spray applications especially, the surface exposure, it causes breakdown, and you haven't completely blown it if it dries before you water it in. When the rain finally comes, it'll still push the active ingredient into the soil, but you might lose some concentration and coverage if it bakes in the sun. You end up with a weaker barrier than you paid for, so don't gamble on it. Now, granular gives you a little bit more flexibility. Both spray and granular applications, they'll need a minimum of ½ inch of water to properly activate the barrier. Now, watering it in sooner is always better, but the label does make mention that you have up to 14 days. Now, here's something most people rarely think about. If your lawn has a heavier layer of dead grass or thatch sitting on top of the soil surface, that product, it may never reach the soil where germination is actually occurring. It just lands in the debris. It bakes and breaks down in the sun, does absolutely nothing. So if you've got significant debris buildup, you want to dethatch before you apply. The workaround, if you can't dethatch first, is to use a granular pre-emergent with a smaller granular size. And the smaller granulars, they have a better chance of working their way down through the debris gaps to the soil surface. But dedicated Prodiamine bags called Barricade without fertilizer tend to run smaller granular size than the combo fertilizer blends. Another reason to know what's in the bag, but even then, it's not guaranteed. If thatch is thick enough, dethatch first. But let's talk about what happens after the application. Aeration, scarifying, dethatching after application physically disrupts the chemical layer in the soil. You'll tear holes in your own protection, which is a bit painful after spending money on the product. So schedule those tasks before the pre-emergent goes down, not after. Another common question I get is this: should I do a split application? So a split app is 2 lighter applications spread over a month or 2, depending on the label. So 2 lighter applications across the window gives you coverage, redundancy, and room to adjust if something goes sideways. Weather happens, plans fall apart, so think of a split application as more of an insurance policy. Great for areas that get hotter sooner and have heavier rainfall in the spring. But last thing on this section is no pre-emergent guarantees 100% efficacy. You're going to see some breakthrough here and there. That's just the reality of how these products work. It's important to understand that they disrupt germination, but if the weed is already germinated, it can sit dormant under the ground. Some species of biennial weeds can sit a full season dormant in the soil before the plant foliage emerges. But if you want to squeeze every bit of performance out of what you put down, there's one rule of thumb that most people don't think about. Don't ever let your soil completely dry out. Dry soil is a silent killer of pre-emergent performance. The chemical needs moisture to stay dissolved and available. That's how germinating seeds actually absorb it. When the soil dries out, it locks up and the seed can slip right through without even picking it up. When moisture returns, it can reactivate, but here's what that doesn't fix. Your efficacy took a hit. Any seeds that germinated during that dry window, they already escaped, and the longer it stayed dry, the more the product degraded. So you don't get that back. So watch your irrigation, watch the forecast. That alone will get you noticeably better results than your neighbors who applied the same product and just walked away. Let's just say that you followed all the rules. You had the perfect application. Well, even after a perfect application, you may still see some weed activity. Pre-emergent, it's not a force field. It's a preventive barrier against future germination. Anything that pre-germinated before that you applied it, you're gonna need to get a weed killing herbicide for that. So go get the right product to handle it separately, but don't rage quit the pre-emergent because a dandelion showed up. Those are 2 different fights. But 3 things to lock these in. 1, soil temperatures at seed depth, not the calendar. 55 degrees is your crabgrass benchmark. So get that thermometer out, check the upper 2 inches, and move when you're consistently hitting between 45 and 50 degrees. But again, it's a pre-emergent. 2, know your product. Prodiamine is your first call, longest coverage, least root damage. Holds up in the rain. Use dithiopyr if your timing slipped and crabgrass is already moving. Check your grass before you buy anything. 3, water the product in before it dries if you use a spray, and make sure that you properly apply if you're using a granular. Clear thatch before that you apply. Protect the barrier from aeration afterwards. Split applications, especially if your lawn is thin or stressed, and do these 3 things right, and your lawn is going to be dramatically clearer than your neighbors this season. Honestly, your neighbors deserve it. It's time to slay that lawn. And if you've got a history of weed problems, apply Pre-Emergent consistently for the next few seasons to drain that seed bank down. And if you already have weeds showing up, one of my favorite cool season grass combos is T-Zone mixed with dithiopyr or Tenacity. It's a killer combo for both killing existing weeds, crabgrass, and preventing weeds from germinating. Be sure to check your grass type first. T-Zone is for cool season grasses and doesn't play nice with warm season grasses like Bermuda, Centipede, or St. Augustine. Everything is linked in the description of the video. In the meantime, guys, if you have any questions, comments, or concerns, hit me up down in the comments down below. You know I'd love to help you guys out. Till next time, guys, it's Pest and Lawn Ginja. We're slaying lawns.